quality of a Fire Emblem map can be separated into 5 different factors. Flavor, how well the map matches the story and atmosphere that it is trying to portray, and whether or not it succeeds at making you feel like you're really experiencing the story as the developers intended. Objective, what the map is asking you to do in order to finish the chapter, be it seizing, routing, escaping, or defending. Is it offering you an objective that is interesting to work towards? Replayability, you finished the chapter, now how do you feel about it? Frustrated? Relieved? Satisfied? There's any number of possible outcomes that can occur after finishing a chapter, so consider whether or not you'd enjoy playing the chapter again on a subsequent playthrough. Difficulty. Difficulty might not be an important factor for everyone, but a fair amount of players yearn to be challenged by Fire Emblem, to be given a puzzle to solve with the resources provided. Was the map that you just finished difficult in a compelling way? Enjoyability. Plain and simple, is the map fun to play? Are you having a good time whilst playing it, and if so, are you able to articulate exactly why the map is so stimulating? When all of these variables are managed effectively, what you're left with is an incredibly satisfying chapter to play through, providing a memorable experience for the player that they'll hopefully be excited to enjoy again during a second playthrough. And if you don't pay attention to this formula, what you're given is some of the worst the series has to offer. My name's Blute. Welcome to F.O.R.D.E. And welcome back to another episode of F.O.R.D.E. That's right, viewer, 2 Radiant Dawn chapters in a row, and they're directly next to one another. Did I literally just pick Tides of Intrigue as our chapter today purely because the last place you'd expect to go is directly behind the previous map? Kinda, but I also have a fondness for this map and Radiant Dawn in general, so tough luck, we're staying here for a little while longer. As for the anagram, I'm imagining you already decoded the mystery of its diet urine fog, which will correlate quite nicely into Tides of Intrigue. Which is a good chapter name, don't get me wrong, but I do also kind of wish that Lucia was in the title somehow, because, you know, that way we'd have a nice trio of Lucia chapter, Jeffrey chapter, Alincia chapter, i.e. it'd be something like Lucia's Intrigue into Jeffrey's Charge into Alincia's Gambit. It'd be a nice little trilogy of chapters. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm getting off topic. Let's get into those categories right now! Flavor. For once, flavor might actually be a chapter's weakest category, because going off of these 5 off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure that Tides of Intrigue is an amazingly deep chapter when it comes to its plot. The story of the chapter is pretty simple. Lucia and the other Crimean bumpkins are sneaking into Ludwig's hideout so they can get some evidence to show that he's planning a revolution, until, oh no, they get discovered and have to vacate the premises as quickly as possible. So in regards to how the chapter should try and make you feel, I've gone over it a bunch in my head and I'm not 100% sure what it wants to do. There should be some echoes of stuff like desperation and trying to make the player move at a quick pace, like hurry up, you're in danger, oh no! Like the big theme for the chapter is, oh no! And it sounds silly, but it is kind of as simple as that. Because you want to get your troops out of there as quickly as possible before you get surrounded and overwhelmed by, like, Ludwig's Ludgoons. But, I'm personally of the opinion that the chapter doesn't do this especially well. I'll just establish this before I go any further, and we'll get more into this with Objective, but it really feels like this chapter should have been an escape map. Maybe not, like, full-on Thrashia-style escape. Anyway, we'll get more into it with Objective. It's a fog of war map, the units you're given range really heavily in strength, and the story is basically giving you like an airport runway guy with the lights telling you, you gotta get out of here, lest you get caught, and Ludwig decides to give Lucia a better haircut. So by having it be arrive instead of escape, it ruins the tone, in my opinion, since instead of having like this heavy urge to report back to Queen Alincia and escape with your life, it feels as though Lucia is fully in control of the situation and will arrive at the exit at her own leisure, which doesn't feel correct. In terms of gameplay, it isn't the worst thing ever, since, like, she's obviously by far the strongest character in that chapter, even more so than the boss. Like, Lucia outranks every other character in that chapter by far. But I'd say it cheapens the dramatic tension by not committing to the idea that, like, something is brewing under Crimea. And if we allow it to fester, it'll grow out of control really quickly, so you'd best hurry along, or otherwise, like, the revolution is going to grow out of control. It's just, it doesn't really, the flavor doesn't really mesh amazingly well with the objective, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry if I seem a little scrambled. I'm extremely tired today. I did not get much sleep last night. Anyway, back to the video. Actually, while we're on the topic of Lucia, as much as I do genuinely like that she's the lord of this chapter and she's finally given, like, a chance to shine, given how, not like done dirty she was in Path of Radiance, but like in terms of gameplay, Lucia in Path of Radiance is one of the weakest swordmasters in the series. She's insanely weak. So I do think it's nice that she's actually given, like, a reasonably important role in the story in Part 2, even if most of, like, she's a character in, like, this chapter, but like after this she kind of just becomes a plot device rather than a character. Regardless, I think it's nice that she is like allowed to do stuff. That being said, I also think that she is the core issue with the chapter's flavor. As I mentioned, she is ludicrously strong for this part of the game. Like, you could put her into Part 3 and she would do incredibly well. Like, compared to your other units like Nephenes and Brahms and Leth, she's the star of the show. And I imagine the devs want to give the player a safety net in the form of a unit who basically can't die. Like, most enemies are sporting around 15 to 30 hit on her, so it's extremely likely for her to even get hit in the first place. And while that is fine from the gameplay side of things, it sort of creates this ludonarrative dissonance where when you see Lucia sneaking into this hidey hole to uncover some information, and then you see the wide disparity between your average enemy and Lucia's, like, comically high speed, it just shatters the illusion that she was in any danger to begin with. The rest of your units feel, like, about as strong as they should be. Like, I have no issue with Nelucci or Leth or Mordecai. They feel, like, about right for that part of the game. So it's a real shame that Lucia doesn't feel like the leader of a small task force that's made up of whatever soldiers they had. They just literally had to use whoever was around. It more just feels like she's an assassin who's completely untouchable. I'd probably give this category a success if it wasn't for just how obscenely strong Lucia is for this part of the game, which is a real shame. Because the flavor of this chapter should be simple and like quite nice, but it just misses the mark for me. Now onto objective. As previously mentioned, the objective for Tides of Intrigue is arrive, which at the end of the day basically just means seize with any one of your units. However, this time around, you're not even allowed to do that, since it requires that you specifically arrive with Lucia. So it is literally just seize, since you have to get to the end with your lord. I take away some points, and I talked about how it messes with the flavor a fair amount, but I actually do really like that they added an additional step to completing this chapter. Which might sound weird, like from an outsider perspective. I talked about how in Jeffrey's Charge there's not a whole lot going on in terms of side objectives, or really having an incentive to play fast other than just getting out of the chapter, like that much quicker. Like, my incentive to play fast in Jeffrey's Charge is like, oh boy, I get to stop playing Jeffrey's Charge. Whereas in Tides of Intrigue, it's completely different. There is a good amount of interesting little details across the map that both encourage you to play reasonably fast and actually gives you a reason to think. For starters, you're given a really strange pool of units for this chapter. You are given 3 Laguz units with Leth, Mordecai, and Nelucci. You're given a Flying Dancer with Leanne. You have an absurdly strong Swordmaster with Lucia. You have a Halberdier with Nephene, a General with Brom, and your Heather. Who is Heather? Genuinely can't think of a more, like, lopsided and peculiar crew in the entire game. Like, 2-2's loadout, to say, is just very strange. Even the Dawn Brigade feels more consistent and regular than this. But while your units might seem weird, it's actually planned out in a way where all of them feel like they're contributing, at the very least, something. Like, obviously, your strongest unit will be Lucia and will almost certainly be doing around, like, 50, maybe 60% of the fighting. But even your weakest units, such as Leth and Heather, will have a purpose on the map. For example, Leth's combat stats are really just plain old not good for this point of the game. She will not one-round any, like, meaningful enemy, like she might one-round a soldier. Or I guess she'll probably one-round magic units, but regardless, she is still a 9-move unit who has increased vision in Fog of War, as well as the ability to block choke points on the map, giving her a helpful role. Heather does virtually no damage to anyone who isn't a mage, but there are both hidden items, and there's a stealable at the end of the map for her to lock onto, almost making her feel like the VIP of the map that needs to be escorted to her specific locations. Like, you need to bring her to the bottom right so that she can get the Discipline Scroll, and get her to the top right to the boss so she can steal the secret book. It's really engaging stuff, I like it. Moreover, all of this is enhanced further by the 7-turn limit for bonus experience. And I know I've said that bonus experience on hard mode shouldn't really be taken into account that heavily, since it's really, like, severely downgraded. Like, you don't get much bonus experience in hard mode. But part of me always really wants to squeeze this chapter for all it's worth, if you know what I mean. Like, I want to find out just how quickly I can complete it by playing hyper aggressively with units like Nephany and Mordecai. It just gets that small part inside of me that just wants to be an LTCer going. It's like, I don't want to LTC games, that's kind of just beyond my understanding, so to say, but this chapter is like compact and just really comfortably sized, so to say, that I feel like being really optimal. So with the map's really, like I said, comfortable size, and the fact that Fog of War is counterable through stuff like Braziers and a droppable torch, as well as just the fact that the strength of your units, aside from Lucia, isn't that high, really makes the chapter that much more fun to play. It's got a great list of things to check off, like the Stealable Secret Book, the Discipline Scroll, and bonus experience, and it feels as though positioning really matters. Like, even if some of your units aren't that good at combat, they can still guard your weaker units like Untransformed Laguz or Liane. I think this chapter absolutely nails objective. Probably the best chapter in part 2 in terms of objective. That's right, I said it. I think this chapter is better than fucking Alincia's Gambit in terms of objective. What are you gonna do about it? Now, for replayability, another mixed category for replayability, shocker. I've already talked about the problems with bringing an entirely new army into a chapter, as it reduces the amount of variance that you can have with your units to pretty much nothing, which was a massive failing of Jeffrey's charge. For Tides of Intrigue, I'd say it doesn't fail nearly as hard as its so-called brother chapter, but it still somewhat falls into the same category. Out of the 8 units that you get in this chapter, you've used 5 of them before, which from an outside perspective would seem like that's a positive thing. But you've only really been allowed to play around with these units for a grand total of 1 chapter. Meaning that outside of getting a godlike level up on Brom or Nephany, the units are basically always going to have the same stats going into this chapter. Brom will double absolutely nothing, Nephany will likely only double with a javelin, Ilucia will be untouchable, Heather will do no damage. Like, the overall status of your characters going into this chapter is almost certainly going to be the same unless Nephany gets a god level in 2-1. Maybe 2 god levels. That's kind of it. So while there's very little room for variance, I would say there is a good amount of versatility with your units. For example, the first hurdle that you have to conquer in the map is that cluster of soldiers towards the center, with a halberdier kind of leading that pod of troops. Now you're almost certainly going to use Lucia to just tackle this issue and probably deal with him on turn 1 thanks to Liane just giving her the extra move. But the rest of your units are given a fair amount of freedom in how they act, i.e. who's going to block the choke point? Who's going to mop up the remaining soldiers? Who's going to act as, like, the vision guy? Who's going to act as the peepers? Are you going to be transforming all of your Laguz or none of your Laguz? Or just Mordecai? Like, there's a good amount of choices that you have to make, and it doesn't feel like there's an optimal decision for any of them. Which is great. Like, I feel like the way I play turn 1 on this map is always a little bit different each time. Also, a minor note, but it's very peculiar to even get base preps for a chapter like this when you're not offered an armory, support, and the only bonus experience you will have will cap out at around like a single level. Very strange choice from the devs to even give you base preps to begin with. I'm not sure what that was about. Regardless, Tides of Intrigue does have its issues with your units being fixed, but I think it offers enough variety in how you choose to use said units, as there's enough to do that isn't just kill the enemy. Like, Jeffrey's charge has 6 units that are kind of in a similar situation to 2-2, but the difference being in 2-3, like, you can basically just only use these units to kill enemies. That's kind of all they do. Whereas in 2-2, it feels like there is a lot more just variety in how you choose to use your units. Now, you can call this Radiant Dawn bias if you want to, because you're absolutely right, you know, it is. But I'm going to give replayability a very generous pass, because democracy has failed us. It's good! This chapter has good replayability, come on! Oof, difficulty. Difficulty won't be a pass, almost certainly. Like I said in Flavor, a good chunk of this map is just going to get completely invalidated by the existence of Lucia, who's a unit who, like, is capable of being helpful in part 4 with her bases, which should pretty much tell you just how, like, comically... I've used so many fucking adjectives for Lucia's strength. She's extremely strong for this part of the game. And not to say that there isn't difficulty at all in 2-2, as getting all of the side objectives completed within the bonus experience time limit can be somewhat challenging, but as for actual enemy quality, there's definitely a lot that could be improved here. I'd say if you want to, like, fix this chapter's overall kind of easy difficulty-ish stuff, you need to have Lucia have slightly lower bases, which wouldn't even impact her that much as a unit since her availability is virtually non-existent, or you need to increase the number of enemies through reinforcements. That was actually one of the key things I noticed with the difficulty, is that despite the start of the chapter indicating that Lucia basically triggered an alarm, just Rutro, we gotta get out of here now. Like, there's basically no reinforcements from Ludwig, which feels kind of strange. Yeah, I want to say there's 3 enemies that will spawn from the far left from turn 6, but the only way that they're actually going to impact your army is if you're playing insanely slow and you're deciding to feed every single kill to Brom. Which, you know, more power to you, because Brom deserves everything good in life. Seriously though, just having small amounts of reinforcements just peppered throughout the map to increase the level of panic and stress as the chapter continues would have gone a real long way. It's just like, turn 2, there's 2 more soldiers coming from the center top. Turn 3, there's like a mage in the bottom, like just tiny amounts of reinforcements. Not much, just a little bit more to add the sweat factor, so to say, like, ooh, it's getting dire. And I'd say, like, increase the strength of these reinforcements as the chapter progresses. Maybe like a mini Galza situation. But as it is, I think difficulty is almost... you know what? Yeah, it's definitely a fail. Side objectives may offer something, but the main objective is just thrust Lucia into Fog of War and watch her just decimate everything. It isn't really that interesting. And now for E. Enjoyability. Who's ready to take another stroll down Radiant Dawn Bias Lane? Spoilers! It's me! It shouldn't come as a surprise that I sincerely enjoy this chapter on pretty much every playthrough I do of FE10. Out of all of the chapters in Part 2, I'd really only call 2 of them fun. That being this one and Alincia's Gambit. Alincia's Gambit is fun because it's a defend chapter that gives you a good amount of tasks and areas to keep track of. Whereas I'd say Tides of Intrigue is super fun to me because it feels like just a really tightly made map with very little wasted space that was just designed to be optimized. Like, I really enjoy finding a use for all of the units in this chapter, even shitters like Leth. Like, recently I've discovered the value of just Laguz stoning Neolucci at the start of the map and actually using him for combat, rather than basically just using him as an extra point of move for Lian, since he's a flyer that can shove. And that has completely changed my game plan for 2-2. It's really cool. So the very notion that I am still finding little tricks here and there to make my play even more optimal shows that I am fully engaged when playing this chapter. Especially compared to the chapter after this, where I turned my brain off and just let the piss units annihilate any active thought still left in my head. Tides of Intrigue is a really fun, perfectly sized chapter that I'm proud to say I enjoy. I don't know why I'm so, like, super gung-ho for this chapter, but I just get really psyched up when talking about it, and I kind of love it. Enjoyability is definitely a pass. I really, really love this chapter. And that is going to wrap it up for this week's episode. It was kind of a split decision thing for me to go back to 2-2-2 after we just did 2-3. But I found that after playing through Tides of Intrigue in order to get to Jeffrey's Charge, there was just a lot of different little tidbits here and there that I thought made it a really noteworthy chapter. Even now, there's just a wonderful amount of minor things that I could keep talking about, like the different Fog of War vision ranges and your limited inventory actually enhancing the chapter and blah 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 blah. I won't bore you with any more of that. I'll just leave the episode with a big old thumbs up and say that this chapter is painfully underrated. One of my favorite chapters in Radiant Dawn. It's really cool. Now, as for our anagram, don't worry, it's not Radiant Dawn again. Or is it? Surely I wouldn't go back to Radiant Dawn for a 3rd chapter in a row. That would just be silly, wouldn't it? I'll leave you to figure that out, with my parting gift being the anagram of Sun Gut Health. For those in the back, Sun Gut Health. Alright, that's it for me this week, everyone. Hope you all are having a good old time in life, hope nothing is stressing you out too badly, and I hope my videos are still providing some entertainment. I will catch you guys next week. Have a great one, everyone.